Thank you for that. Brother Gordon and Brother Mark, for your helping hand with that. I'll speak loud. I am not a veteran. I am the son of a veteran, the grandson of a veteran, and the son-in-law of a veteran. And as such, I would like to think I know a little about how our veterans feel and what they care about. One thing I do know is this: they do not ask for much. They ask for very little, in fact. They do not ask that we honor them with annual parades, though veterans parades we often attend. They do not ask for flag ceremonies, school programs, musicals, though school programs and musicals we often perform. They do not ask that the church host for them a prayer breakfast, although we have just come from a veterans prayer breakfast shared amongst friends. They don't ask for any of these things. They ask only that persons like myself, persons like my wife Barbara, and people like our three children would just give thought to the service and sacrifice that military families across our whole nation are making today in keeping our nation free. It can be argued then that this morning's breakfast was really for people like my wife and I, and for Pastor and Sister Kelly, because it reminds us that our families are the ones who are the beneficiaries of their service and their sacrifice.
Amen.
I have learned the best way that we can honor our veterans this morning is to simply live our lives well and to continue teaching our children what American veterans are really like. I am not a veteran. I have never raised my right hand and sworn an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, to protect it against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I have never worn the uniform, laced up combat boots, or eaten MREs. I have never uprooted my wife from her home or my kids from their school and relocated them across country or to some distant land. I have never took part in search and destroy missions through the jungles, the rice paddies of Da Nang, nor have I stood post through the night in the freezing rains of Incheon. I have never been aboard ship in the hostile waters of the Gulf of Tonkin or the perilous waters of the Strait of Hormuz in the Persian Gulf. I have never been pinned down while patrolling the streets of Ramadi, Fallujah, or Baghdad. I have never been wounded or scarred from battle. I know nothing of your service, your sacrifice, your courage, your survival. I know nothing about what you know. In light of this, thank you somehow seems inadequate. I appreciate your service seems a bit routine. My grandmother, when I was just a boy and would do for her, she would often tell me later that she was much obliged. Much obliged. 2 words, 11 letters. Somehow that expression resonates with me. Much obliged resonates with me because it conveys the idea of indebtedness, that I am somehow indebted to someone or to some group of people who have served in my behalf or acted in my interest. I have been to Washington, D.C. a number of times. I visit Arlington Cemetery every chance I get. And on a recent Saturday morning visit there, I encountered a woman, a middle-aged looking woman, a mother, no doubt. And she had brought a chair and was sitting next to what I believe was her son's grave. She rested her arm along the top of the marker, as if she were resting it along the top of his shoulders, as if to give him a big hug. I stood off in the distance, and as I observed, I began to sense her loss. I began to sense her grief. And I wanted so badly, Sister Bergen, to make my way over to her, not to ask questions of her, not so that I might read the details on the marker, but to simply sit with her in silence, sharing for a moment in her loss. I thought better of it, and I walked away. And as I walked away, I could only whisper those 2 words, those 11 letters: much obliged. In closing, I know that these words will be soon forgotten. I know they ring a little shallow this morning. Once or twice a year is not often enough to reflect on your service for my family. But let the 18 veterans in this little local assembly know today that I consider myself a better person for having known you. And for that, I am much obliged.
Yes, amen.